I'm Debbie Foreman, and welcome back to another episode of GAPCAST. For those of you that are new here, the GAPCAST is the place and space here on YouTube and with our shorts on Instagram where we talk about the world of gaps. We can do reactions, interviews, podcasts, and sometimes just a little bit of framework. And what do we specifically talk about? The gaps that hinder progress: stagnation, qualification, competition, and results. Well, today we're going to be talking about that through the lens of leadership at home, as a parent, and leadership in the workplace. I'm bringing on a special guest. Her name is Tiffany. And once we bring her on, then we'll start the talk because I don't want to waste any more of your time. Hi, Tiffany. Welcome to our GAPCast episode today on leadership and parenting. It's good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, before we get started, I think everybody needs to know how Tiffany and I met. Okay. And it's like, what is it? Like sisters from a different mister?
Yes,
something
definitely.
Definitely. But so everybody knows that I moved to the United States about 3.5 years ago from Brazil after 36 years abroad. And I'd say within 1 or 2 weeks after I had moved here, because my daughter is a competitive gymnast, she was at gym training, and then I meet another gym mom, and that gym mom had just moved to the United States also from Canada.
Right.
And so the two of us find ourselves sitting there as the foreign gym moms to high performance gymnasts. Everybody knew each other, everybody knew everything, and we're sitting there lost in the space of California lifestyle. And completely lost because everything that we knew was completely different here in California. And we come from what we consider, we, you and me, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to say more progressive cultures. And we felt that we were being hindered and that there were gaps. We had our own gaps. We had gaps at work. We had gaps in lifestyle, gaps in culture, blah, blah, blah. And we were just like sitting there in the gap abyss. Correct?
Correct.
And then I found out that because this gym is like, a training center and gymnasts come from all over Los Angeles, but that Tiffany lived like literally like half a mile away. And then months later, she moved into the same complex where I live without telling me. She kept it as a surprise. And then we became neighbors. And through that process, we've been working on filling what we're going to call our cultural adaptation gaps as mothers in California, as professionals in California, the cultural differences. And I've had the pleasure of doing that. And so do you want to add anything to that whole how we met story? I mean, tell us from your perspective.
Well, I would say, in life, I believe things are meant to be. And Debbie and I hit it off right off at the beginning. Just perspectives, interests in how we want to raise not only our girls, but how we want to raise ourselves in this life. There's so much to be said about that. I think that one thing I really appreciate about Debbie is there's a constant evolution of wanting to do better, and not necessarily in haste, but in consciousness. And so we really have this connection that way where I think it transcends time and space, because it's not just about the roles we play, it's just about being the best human that we can be. So that's the only addition I would add there.
Yeah, well, you just hit on one of the GAPTrax biggest sessions. One of our biggest episodes is literally on time and space, because gaps are time and space related, and leadership is time and space related. And so, you just brought something up. I'm going to pull up, before we go on, for those of you that are watching that don't know this world of gaps, and now that Tiffany brought up time and space, I just want to pull something up. I'm going to pull a couple things up throughout this episode, Tiff, all right, that I kind of set aside. But for you guys, what are gaps and what is that world of time and space? So if you're watching this, you're going to bear with me for a minute while I share my screen, because I'm never good at this part. So for those of you that are watching, this is our 2026 ebook. You can find the link in the description, or you can fill out the form for our newsletter, and then you can get this. But regardless of that, I want to talk really quick about a little bit of time and space, all right, and the world of gaps. And I'm not going to go into detail because this is available for everybody. But what is a gap? And people say, oh, I know what a gap is. I know what a gap is. So I really want to kind of pull this in because Tiffany kind of hit on it. Gap is what you perceive and what you know. So a lot of times we perceive things differently and a lot of times we have the bad cop talking to us in our heads, and we perceive ourselves to be less than or under par from what we actually know because we're not able to pull those active skills out when we need them. But then there's what you talked about was the intentionality that we work on the intentionality of constant evolution. So what you intend, but if that intention doesn't reach an achievement, then there's a gap. Then there's the day-to-day stuff, and this is where we're going to get into later on with Tiffany, are the skills that we possess. The skills that we possess as mothers or fathers in parenthood, the skills that we possess as professionals, the skills that we possess as citizens of a culture, and the skills that we lack. Sometimes we're not lacking them, we're not activating them, and sometimes we just don't have them. And then finally, the effort that we give and the results that we get. An achievement and results are not the same thing. You can achieve something without the desired result if you don't know how to estimate the result that you want. And then before I go any further, just on this, one more time, and I say this all the time, what is the gap problem set? And this goes back to today's episode where we're talking about leadership through parenthood and leadership in the workplace. Okay. And if you're not a parent yet, you probably will be. Okay. So use this as a learning lesson for the future. Gaps represent themselves in one of four, if not all four, of these pain points. Stagnation, you're stuck, you're in the hamster wheel, you're in the same cycle, you're repeating the same cycle. Qualification, you don't feel that you're qualified to be where you intend to be because there's the intentionality. That can be through skills and knowledge, necessarily with marketable application, but it can also be a perception of qualification and not the actual skill itself. Competition. And people are always thinking like, a brand competing with a brand. But we compete for time and space. We compete for space. We compete for attention. We compete to be heard, to be seen, to be known. And that can make us fall behind. Here it says in the global marketplace, but it can make us fall behind in our intentionality as a parent or as a leader. And then finally, because these three, we end up in like an infinity cycle loop of results. The results just aren't what we intended them to be. And often that comes at the cost of invisibility. So when we're talking about this, and this is the first part that I just wanted to kind of go through so people can get into the time and space of what we're just about to talk. I have a little list of questions here that I'm going to read off of. So the first one, Tiff, I keep calling her Tiff. Her name is Tiffany. Sorry. As I thought about this, I really wanted you, because it's so fascinating. You guys, she's such an amazing person. I want you to tell us your life through the lens of leadership from childhood until now. That's part one. But of course, I decided to stack this on. What did you observe at home in the world of leadership? And leadership often is a lack of or a gap of. And the other one is, how did you develop self-reliance skills, and what skills were they? And what part of that leadership came from home? What came from your education? What came from the workplace? And what came from community?
Okay. That's
Big
a
one.
lot.
I know, sorry.
That's a lot. Okay, where do I start? I would say, first and foremost, leadership is a skill and an aptitude and an attitude that comes from, I think it starts in the home. So I would say that it's generational. I had the privilege of being raised with a grandparent and parents, young parents who still were learning, had a lot to figure out, but a grandmother particularly who came from little education, came from a situation where she lost her father at a young age and actually was forced into work management and leadership, ended up having 9 children, and essentially had to figure out very quickly how she was going to lead. And so having the privilege of being very close to a grandmother who somehow learned the art of leadership without having formal knowledge, in terms of formal education, is still, I think, a feat to me. And it is fascinating because 6 boys, 3 girls, had them on a very strict regimen, and lived in Guyana, in a country that didn't necessarily have all the resources, but she had a clear vision about what she wanted for her children, and education was huge for her. So I always knew that from her, from my parents, education, number one requirement. I say that to say, even though my parents were young, they also had a unified vision of the value and importance of having me have a good education. And so, therefore, even after separating, in my own youth, that was still the mantra. And I'm bringing that up to say that my dad was a teacher very early on in his life and saw himself as a leader, has always seen himself as a leader. My mom is not a follower and always had her own mindset, did not trail after anyone. And I think, as you distill all these experiences and characters in my life, and roll them up nicely into a ball, um, I come from a legacy of people who generally just did what they felt needed to be done, had a vision, had clarity for themselves. Right or wrongly, that's what they did. So,
Wait, before you go on, I have a question. You said your dad saw himself
uh-huh,
as a leader. Did you see yourself?
yes,
Did you see your dad as the leader that he saw in himself?
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Some of it was because it's just inherently, as a father figure, he commanded that spirit, and he was the stronger, I would say, character of the two. But I saw my mother as a leader as well because she literally set her own path. So I never saw her doing what other people did, like the common pathway. So very early on in my life, I actually picked up that my parents were leaders in their own right because of how they saw themselves in relation to other people as leaders of their own lives. Difference is my dad took on the mindset of that he's also a leader of people.
Well, leading a home
So,
is leading people, but yeah, that because people always get that thing like, I lead teams, I lead community, and at home I have the leadership, but always forget that the people in your home are the ones that you're leading. And people forget that you transport that leadership from home to work as a
right,
skill.
right. And so, again, seeing my dad, because he was very involved in the community. Actually, my mom was as well. So, there's an element of appreciating their involvement, because if you weren't necessarily in formal leadership roles, they still participated in spaces where they led initiatives or led teams. So my mother, she at our local community center where I did ballet, tap, and jazz, she sewed costumes for our community. My dad worked in the local community center and led programs there. So all of this is what I'm seeing as I'm growing up. And so fast forward, then get involved into the church, and any faith-based community. As a child, you're always going to fall into a position where you're going to be either participating in activities, leading activities. I was in an Anglican church growing up, and we did a lot of youth group, and so you're always leading youth initiatives. We had opportunities to be involved in camps and be camp counselors and be um, cross bearers and all kinds of stuff. So the church, you see leadership all the time. You have opportunities to actually learn from other people outside of your parents. I think it's one of the most rare environments where you have opportunities to fail and learn in your leadership experience. And so I would say those formative years, again, being in a faith-based community, uh, very, very instrumental and helpful in helping me to develop leadership skills. And then I had the privilege of going to a newer high school in Markham in Ontario, Canada. And within the first 10 years of school, we had a business class that actually taught leadership and management skills. And at the time, you're young, you're like, I don't want to do this stuff. But in hindsight, those were some of the best lessons I learned. And they carry me until today. So we had to do an actual leadership and management module. And I know it sounds horrible. It's like side hustle hoarding. I still have some of those notes.
It's not side hustle hustle. No, it's um, and when you read back, you see how young and immature you were, but how important those notes were.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I keep them exactly for that reason. But to also take note of how much was already ingrained in me and has stayed with me and is integral in how I lead today. Um, uh, so important as a young person to have learned those lessons during that time. Um, and then I would say along the way, just having the opportunity to work as a teenager, to earn your own money, to earn your own keep. I also had the responsibility of raising a younger sibling. We have 12 years apart, or we are 12 years apart. And I essentially had to take her to daycare, do all the diapering, literally raise her like my own. So we have a joke that amongst my family, she was technically my first child. So I would say that that was learning on the fly. I didn't necessarily have anyone around telling me how to do things, when to cook, what to cook. You just did what you had to do. So to Debbie's point, not necessarily having the skills, but you just had to figure it out.
Well, I did. I'm going to differ there, but before I go on to that, I want to recap this first part. And
Hmm.
when I do this, you guys, I always like pull out keywords because I want you to see from my perspective when I'm looking. When people talk to me and they say these things, and they my brain only goes to either the gaps or the gap fillers, the gap filler. And so, excuse me, when I was looking at that, you came up with like two very different slides. One is you talked, these are keywords that you came up with. Okay, I wrote them down. Um, strict, a strict regime that your grandmother had to have. So there was that strictness. Oh, is strict leadership? The ability to say no is leadership. The ability to put limits is leadership. The abilities to create accountability, and we're going to get to accountability in a minute, is leadership. So when people say strict regime, it means that she had the skill set to be able to establish limits and to reinforce them. Okay. People
Definitely.
sometimes see that as like, oh, mean. It's not. It can be strict. It can be following the code of ethics. It could be a compliance. So there was a compliance procedure. So in today's world, when we say, what are the skills that we have as parents? Oh, she's strict. Does that mean that you're going to be like, nobody can do anything in the workplace? No, it means that you're able to follow compliance. Okay, so we've got that one on, and I just wanted to bring that up. Um, you talked about value, the importance and the value of education. You also, and value is when some people say, I was forced to get an education. I had to get an education. But you're associating the word value as though it's not just the value in the sense of money, but the value of being able to create the skills to evolve.
Hmm.
You talked about your mom not following, she was out of the box in her own way. So, one of the other episodes that we've got is really focusing on status quo because the status quo can hinder progress. We dream of more, we imagine more, especially if we go to university education, the beginning of a career, and then we follow into the status quo. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have kids. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go run around like a chicken with my head cut off. I'm going to do the logistics because everybody else does it and because that's what's expected of
Yeah.
me. And then you fall into the status quo. Once you fall out of the status quo, but to be able to follow the status quo, you need to have those leadership skills developed that cross-reference from work to home and home to work. Okay. Then you brought up another faith-based leadership. Tiffany and I are both faith-based people from different faiths. And you had said about youth groups and being a camp counselor, so on and so forth. And I'm just going to throw in my daughter left for her camp last Sunday as her first year as a paid camp counselor. She's getting paid $18 an hour. And for 2 weeks. But to do that was 60 hours of leadership training to be able to go and put in the programs. And so when we say that, and through today's world of project-based learning, competency-based education, those leadership skills are put into the curriculums. Not all schools have them, but many do. And so that leadership, that youth-based development to be able to lead, because now she's got a cabin of her own with a bunch of second graders. She's 16, and it's her responsibility to make sure that they go through the program. So yes, faith-based leadership. You talked about generational. And in my religion and in Hebrew, we say lador vador, from generation to generation. We do absorb what happens in the home and those leadership skills. And often people say, I didn't have that in the home. So you and I are lucky because we had it in the home. And we're able to we got it from our grandmothers, from our mothers, from ours, and our children are getting that. But sometimes we feel that we're not being successful in passing down to the next generation because of the overwhelm that we're going through. And Tiffany and I have struggled with this immensely, especially here in California. It's like life requires from us the status quo. We don't want to be in the status quo. We have to get from here to there, and we've got all of the demands. Time and space are limited. And so we sit there and say, wait a second, are we being intentional in passing down from generation to generation that strict, commanded spirit in motherhood, and so on and so forth? Because we do it at work. We're good at it at work. How are we transporting that into our parenting? And we're going to get to that in a minute. But before I go on to the next part, because I'm going to bombard you more, I've got something else that's going to kind of help tie this in. And I had it. Yes, I do. I have something that you guys cut that last part out. I have something that I want to put up on screen really quick, just because we're talking about leadership, and leadership at the end of the day is always about accountability. And you had mentioned accountability at one point, and so I'm going to throw this up on or a synonym to accountability. And here we go. I'm sharing again. And we're up in 2, 3. For those of you that are watching, what you're seeing here are bits and pieces of some of our framework, but these are where ambiguity, the ambiguous definitions make us sometimes feel a tension, and I'm going to say self-blame in leadership. Okay. And so I like to point this out like really quickly. Accountability is the glue that ties what? What is accountability? Commitment to results. However, this being said, and this is where the ambiguous portion always comes from, and I'm just going to go through this real quick. There is a huge gap and a big difference between to be accountable for, you are accountable for, and I don't know if you can see this font, but to feel accountable for. So what happens? To be accountable for, that's I'm going to call it, you can see it on the screen. It says the legal and the compliance and requirements. It means the laws that we abide by, the rules that we have to follow, the processes that they do it. And often we hate it, but we have to abide by it. I mean, like I was accountable last week for the parking ticket I got because I didn't move my car on street sweeping day. I was pissed off. The guy was there putting it on my car. I'm like, come on, but I got to follow it. And I'm accountable for that ticket. Thank you very much. Now, to feel accountable for is often the badge of honor that we wear on our sleeve. If I don't do it, nobody else will. The world needs to be saved, and I'm the only one that can do it. Or my home, and we have this feeling that we hold ourselves accountable for, but there's no requirement for it. We consider it ethical, we consider it moral, but often, and what happens is that it falls out of the status quo. We feel like we have to follow the status quo, so we have this feeling that I should be accountable for something that makes me feel either guilty or blames. It shifts the blame to other people. Wait a minute, we're accountable for this. Somebody goes, no, we're not. We're only accountable for the compliance. Because one person wears that badge of honor and the other one doesn't. And so when you're working in the leadership, in the team space, where do these gaps come from? The interpretation of accountability. Okay? So that being said, I'm going to go back to Tiffany. Here's the next one. You ready? What leadership skills were you ready to deploy when you began your career? And tell us a little bit about your career.
All right. So I am a health informaticist. Sorry, I can't speak. I am a health informaticist. I have a nursing background, but I work in health IT. So essentially, we use technology to enable healthcare processes and workflows. And I, in hindsight, recognize now that I had the skills to do the job. But when I first started in my career, which I'm now in over 20 years, I had no idea what health IT was. I saw the job posting on a board and thought, that's a cool job to do. And I went for an interview with a small amount of research, but still didn't fully understand what I was getting myself into. And I mean, it was still, at the time, it was still a new discipline. And jumped into the job believing that I would just learn on the job and figure it out. And in my innocence, because I was in my 20s, I don't even think I was that active in my thoughts. I just went and learned along the way, and realized that part of not knowing actually was a benefit, because I objectively applied what I did know in terms of nursing and nursing workflow and nursing process. I was able to translate that into tech because I was part of a generation that tech came easily to me. And I worked with some nurses who were hired into the role who were a little bit, I'm going to say, older minded, to be respectful, and didn't feel as equipped to apply their nursing knowledge and translate that into tech, or vice versa. So that was definitely an advantage. The other thing I would say is, because my family is, I'm going to say, quite complex and fragmented, I've, over the years, inherently learned communication skills by osmosis. And so, because I have such a diverse family and have had to learn different communication styles, I was able to navigate complex projects, and have been able to navigate complex environments and adapt, because just inherently because of my experiences, my natural experiences.
All right, keywords. You ready? You guys, because Tiffany has been going through the, let's call it a GAPTrax mentorship, as a neighbor. I don't know what you want to call it, as a allocated mom to the state of California, with me for the last 3.5 years. So look at the words she just pulled up that we always use. Well, hindsight. You've used it twice, and hindsight's really important, because when we're 20, we cannot imagine ourselves at 50. You can't fathom what that's going to be like. God, when I'm 50, you can't. Your brain is not able to fathom what it doesn't know. And because we look at that on a matrix, I know that I know, I know that I don't know, I don't know that I know, I don't know that I don't know. Your brain can't go that place. So where does hindsight come in when we're, let's call it, in the middle years of the middle portion of our life? We're driving our car, we're going down the road, we look in the rear view mirror, and all of a sudden we see more of the path behind us than we do ahead of us. So hindsight says, wait a second, I had that. I didn't acknowledge it. It was kind of inherent. But now that I'm here, That hindsight I'm going to put to the road ahead of me because I know it works. Or that hindsight I'm never going to allow in front of me because I know it doesn't work. And you've mentioned hindsight twice, which is navigate, complexity to simplicity. That is leadership. Now, the question is in leadership, the ability to navigate complexity without becoming depressed, without becoming a Karen, which I've been known for in the past. My daughter the other day walked down the street and it still feels like I got really upset about something. She's like, "Mom, your name is Debbie, not Karen. To keep walking." You know, and there it is. But the ability to navigate complexity, and when people become overwhelmed, when people are in a leadership position and they become overwhelmed, anything that's complex is not going to become simple.
So accurate.
It will not become simple. Now, Tiffany and I have had our battles. We do really well in the workplace with this. But as mothers, when we become overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
the complex situations of raising teenagers in Los Angeles and so on and so forth, that complexity, sometimes we don't turn into the simple solutions that we need to. And so we've been working hard on creating the simplicity within the complexity and removing that overwhelm. Okay. And navigating the process in the way. So now you just talked about the leadership skills in the workplace from the time you were born, what you saw at home, in the workplace. Great. How did that transport to being a mom?
So, so fascinating because in a lot of ways it's the same journey. Uh, you see people, you see your own family, you see people in your faith-based environments, you get some form of training, whether it's because an auntie taught you how to change a diaper or your mom taught you how to cook. In my case, I've had a lot of how would I say, interruptions along the way. And so somewhere along my journey, I appreciated the beauty of, even though my life was not traditional, uh, I was able to take a little bit from each person that's passed through. So while I may not necessarily have had, you know, mom and dad always around me, so I could actually learn how to cook in a way, I learned from somebody else that passed through my life. And so training is interesting because it's been at times choppy and in other ways seamless. So, for example, with my sister, some things I did learn along the way and through observation. So, for example, how to braid hair. And then eventually I'm responsible for this young child. And then I had to learn how to do her hair. So, port that now into having 3
Wait a
children.
second. I'm going to give a timeout on this for one. Obviously, Tiffany and I come from different ethnicities, but it was not until this gym moment when she's like, "No, I need a couple of hours. I'm not going to be able to because I need to do the hairs." I'm like, "The what? The hair. I need to braid the hair." I'm like, "The what?" Yeah, because we got. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Because in in our home, you get in the shower, you wash, you put in a towel, da da da. No blow dryer, no nothing. Out the door you go and you're done. But hair is part of
It's a
your day to.
project.
It's a project.
Oh, yeah. And so, yeah, so to that point, um, learn to braid through observation, then practiced a lot over the years. And thankfully, that's a great skill that I have. And so then ported that into parenting. And that is a routine. And most people with similar hair to mine or who have Afro heritage or parents of Afro American, Canadian, whatever you want to call it, children, that's part of your life experience. And so I inherently just knew what to do because I've been doing it since I was raising my sister at 12 years old.
What did you not
Easy.
know how to do?
What I did not know how to do was set a this has been an evolution, set a structure that I adhere to consistently. So what I mean by that is I have observed friends who grew up in a very structured home, and while I did to some degree, but have a an influence where you understood that part of your responsibility as a parent is to set a standard and it's not to be negotiated. That's something that I've had to learn over time and to develop my own strength to sustain.
Let me
I
ask
didn't know
you
that.
the bombshell question, ready? That came up as you were
Yeah.
talking. All right. Because you said most of those skills that we have, that real life skills, leadership skills, I'm talking about the leadership skills that
Mm-hmm.
come from the home, generational, so on and so forth, we transport into work, and the work ones we transport into home, and they're kind of one and the same. How does unconditional love as a parent, as a mother, change how you apply the skill?
Oh, that's a great question. Unconditional love essentially states that no matter what the feelings are, certain things they just got to go down. It's not an option. So I don't care how you feel. This is just what got to happen. Or else you, as a child, are going to bomb, or it's going to impact everybody around you. So I love you. You're not my friend in this case. And so just got to do what you have to do. Because I said you got to do what you have to do.
Let's let everybody know here because we didn't introduce this part. How many kids do you have?
I have 3 children. I've got 2 girls and a boy. Boy's 9. Next girl, middle child, is 11, turning 12 in January. And then I've got a 15-year-old friend of Debbie's, little
Yes.
lady.
A friend of Debbie's daughter.
Daughter, correct.
Yes, correct. Not that I don't love Sage, but yes, she's my daughter's friend. Because like I have to follow Tiffany's adherence rules, so I can't be friends with her. I can be friendly to her, but we got to make sure that as parents, and this is something I want to send a message to everybody. Parental leadership. When parents are clear with what they expect in their leadership, when somebody else's child is in your home or in your care or in your with you, as the parent that's taking that child in, somebody else's child in, it's our obligation to help maintain that leadership. So if
Mm-hmm.
you had mentioned that clear communication is part of leadership. So if Tiffany's very clear to me and says, this is the boundary or this is where we have to go, it's my job to make sure that that leadership is maintained. Because if I'm just the friend, the kid's friend, then the kid's not going to understand. She's going to think that mothers react differently. And so that's a message in the clear communication is what do we want and how are we going to help each other maintain our leadership, our parental leadership styles. And you've got 3
Absolutely.
in that preteen teenage, and I've only got 1, but you have a husband and I'm a single mom. So we've got that balance.
Mm-hmm.
Now comes the big question, or no, another big question. Like I'm bombshelling today. As motherhood progresses, here's the question, and you now have 3 kids to dribble, including marriage, work, and community. Where have you felt that the leadership skills are not transferring over?
Huh. I would say in the accountability part. And I say that to say because again, we talk about unconditional love. And it's interesting how that shows up in work and how that shows up at home. Because ultimately, uh as I'm processing this, I'm realizing that in some twisted way, we actually are showing unconditional love at work more than we do at home because we are accountable. We want to get paid. We want to have a certain appearance. We want to maintain a standard, and it affects, in my case, a consortium based on my decision making. While the implications and the impact is actually worse by me not doing the same thing at home, because it's the place where you get to rest your head after a long day, and you don't necessarily have I call it the juice to keep going. You let go of some of that. But what actually should be happening, or what I have come to realize, is it should be the same, if not more important, at your house. Because the risk of the outcomes of what will happen as of not, as a result of not applying the same level of accountability is actually more impactful based on, well, what I value anyways, is to have amazing human beings come out of my house.
So how do you replenish the juice?
Oh, so as of recent, I've realized that I have to make space for myself to pour in some juice into my own body, whether it's taking quiet time, taking time to read, do all the things that I enjoy, do my hair. Did my hair, I'm so proud. Spend time with good
It's so
people,
much time. Okay, go on.
right? But there's only so much time.
Time and
So
space.
we
Time
have
and
to
space.
defend it.
The time to do the hair and have the space to do it. I always say, these gaps arise. If you don't have it, then you're not going to feel good and you're going to build up. But if you don't have the time and space,
Absolutely.
it just drives me nuts that time and space is spent on hair. But okay, go on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I use the example of hair. I still had my laptop with me at the salon, and I'm very mindful that that's not necessarily something that I should always practice. But at the same time, there's it's an evolution. And so, I am working towards making more space to completely dial out. But, these are the complexities of being a mom, a working mom in the year 2026.
Okay, so let's take that thread one step further. So I want people that are watching this to really, really think about it. If you're a struggling parent in the home leadership, because you're better feel like you're more successful at work, and then at home the juice runs out, or it's harder to put the limits down, and that time and space, and you just want the quiet time. Here's the thing, and the accountability, all that kind of wraps up, and it goes into the stagnation process. Because it feels so hard, we go back to the pain point, stagnation. I'm stagnant. I'm not getting out of this rut. I don't have the qualification to do it. And a lot of times, feeling like that qualification is, you're not transporting that qualification from work to home. Because of the feeling of accountability, was the badge of honor that you wear, and because you don't have the juice. So, in that the question is it the qualification of transporting the skill and applying the skill, or is it the qualification of creating the space for yourself? Well, how do you create the space for yourself if you don't have the groundwork done? And so that constant cycle, stagnant cycle goes and goes. If I take the time and the space to do the work and set the ground rules at home like I do at work, I don't have the juice, I don't have the energy, and so I don't do it, and then and it keeps going. So I wanted to move into something else. Tiffany, I don't know, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, something like
Was
that.
kind of work saying like, how can we've got some little situations going
I was
on.
like, what is this?
A couple situations going on here, and my space in my juice bottle just broke.
Empty. Yeah.
Boom! It shattered. I'm not quite sure if it was a glass juice bottle that shattered into pieces or a plastic one that we went to recycling, but that juice bottle was gone. Okay, regardless of that. And I said, Tiff, all right, here's the time. Now it's time for the time and space. And I'm gonna throw this up on screen really quick. 2 things up on screen, and then we're gonna roll it out from there. Okay, you ready? This is for you guys that are watching, because if you're a parent, we know that mothers tend to take on the biggest part of the burden, but I'm not taking away the fathers from this. But if you are a parent that has leadership skills, whether they're at home and you're struggling to employ them at work, because a lot of times you have those skills and you don't know how to transport those over to work to get a promotion, to get when I say a promotion or a raise, but I'm talking about to be able to take on more responsibility and burden because you feel like, oh, I only do that at home. I don't have the space. How do I transport that into the workplace? Because there's a lot of moms. Maybe you've taken a gap year, a leap year, or 2 years off, 4 years off, and you feel like when you go to a job interview, how am I going to say, oh, I don't have experience? Oh, you got the experience, trust me. If you've been out of the workforce and you're going back in and you're a mom or a father or you're parenting and you've got those leadership skills inside your home and you've got that structured, now how do you bring that? How do you transport that? How do you identify it? And vice versa. And the opposite is said, I run out of juice at work and then it kind of turns into that stagnant cycle. How do I get the time and the space to do it? All right. So what I want to do, I'm just going to go back. Oops, hold on. The editors will work on this part right here. Are you up on my screen? So one of the workflows, our overarching methodology here at GAPTrax, people are like, okay, see, do, become. That's a methodology. Inside that methodology, we have a zillion frameworks, okay? And we're going to bring in one of the frameworks in a minute, but I really want to talk about this because when Tiffany came to me, whatever it was, when the juice bottle went empty, I was like, wait a minute. She went straight to, I have to do, because she's a doer. Planning, forecasting, execution, do. I'm like, wait a minute, stop. First you need to see. Stop. Until you can see it clearly, there is a difference between coherence and incoherence. Gap. It needs to be coherent, what you're seeing, because you feel it, and that's a perception. But if we go, let's go back for 1 sec. I'm going to go back, if I can pull this up, to that right here, what you perceive and what you know. So often that gap is the perception, and what we know, we think we know because we're perceiving it. But when we go to see and skip the do part because you want to just execute. But why do you want to execute? Because you want everything to become the way you want it to become. You want to become the person you want to be. You want the family to be structured, organized, and you want that becoming to be happening. So you jump to the do, or some people just want to see and then become. But in this case, this workflow, this methodology is, I got to see it. What do I need to see? Because once you can see it, you know what you have to do. The becoming is just the result of that. But there's a lot of times, what do people do? And this is where it gets out. I object. No, wait. Let me explain why it's not going to work. Let me explain why this is going to happen. Let me tell you why this is. Why is it? It could be a question of urgency, clarity, that coherency, capacity. Maybe your juice bottle's empty. Or maybe you just don't trust yourself or trust those around you. So in this, I threw Tiffany. I said, all right, time to see. Yeah. And this is why. All right. And I threw this over to Tiffany. I said, start and see. And I'm going to talk every single one of these parents through this before Tiffany tells us about her experience. You're able to see the spreadsheet, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you are a mother or a father, you are parenting. You have skills that you apply in the home that you want to bring to work, or vice versa. You're a parent, you have high leadership skills, but you're finding yourself lagging at work. This goes both ways. It's a gap filler, okay? I'm just going to read you through this. We are going to supply this to you. I don't know how yet. We're going to talk to the tech team to find a way that you guys can have access to a link to download this and fill it in on your own. Now, what are we looking at? I'm just walking you through the structure of this framework, but it's life-shattering. It can change your entire life in a question of hours. When we talk about leadership, there's different sources of leadership, and we're going to look at it from both the parental and the work side. Part of leadership is protecting ourselves, protecting those around us. There's physical protection, legal protection, financial and emotional. I think that's pretty clear to everybody. But we don't think of it that way when we talk about leadership. There's integration. we need to know how to integrate in leadership. So I'm going to say this, looking at from the family side, both sides of a family, you got to integrate the husband, the wife, or the partners, or whatever it is. You need to be able to integrate friends and family, not just adult friends as adult friends, but children friends with children friends. There's always the question of integration between the children's friends and the family's lifestyle, morals, and ethics, which is a big one. Integration of political, social, cultural, and religious upbringings. If people are from different, Tiffany are completely different religious upbringings, but we are able to integrate at a very high level because we believe in faith-based leadership and community involvement. And then there comes another question of how do you integrate community as part of a family, especially if you're a working parent. Tiffany, you brought this up a bunch of times, clear communication. But what is clear communication? To be heard, to be understood, to learn, to communicate effectively, because you can say a lot and nothing happens. And that brings us back. I'm going to flip for 1 second here. What you intend and what you achieve. There's that gap, what you intend and what you achieve. So let's bring that back to here. Effective communication. We hear it a lot, but what is my intent in that communication and have I achieved it? And here's one that I always put in. Maybe it's because I have a Karen tendency DNA that I have to really work on in my leadership, which is to not blow my stack. Okay. Then there's the question of leadership and schedule, time and space, time and space, time and space. Schedule is time and space. To coordinate, do you coordinate your time and space alone? Do you coordinate it in family? And the time and space that you coordinated, is it abided to? Is it followed? I mean, these are things to really think about, because this is where you can blow your stack. And this is where I blow mine. I'm a single parent. I've got to be in 4 places at the same time. And somebody doesn't abide by the schedule. I blow my mind. And how am I going to manage that? How am I going to lead that process? Through clear communication. Health and wellness. This is what you were saying. Make time for yourself. Time to learn. Time to be alone. Tiffany, you just said that. Time to be alone. Maybe a nutritional plan. Maybe a braiding hair plan. You guys heard it from Tiffany. Emotional support, therapy and coaching, and physical wellness. Health and wellness. All right, let's bring this into the workplace. How to learn to apply your domestic skills as leadership skills. How to upskill and back to the time to learn, the space to learn. How do you share your time away from work for the kids' school activity with your partner so it does not reflect negatively on your work? Okay? Because how many times women hear this more than men? I'm not saying that men don't hear it. Women hear it more than men. If I leave work, I might lose my job. If I leave work, I'm not going to get done, or I'm going to have to work overtime. Well, the same applies to us, but we tend to give in. Help with logistics, more self-confidence, less imposter syndrome. How do we get that in the skill and leadership development that we have at home and bring that into the workforce? Space and authority to demonstrate your leadership and interviewing skills and the courage to try. This is a really big list. It feels big. It's actually not all that long. I mean, there's not that many lines. So what do we do? And I want you guys to download this. I want you to be able to look at it, and then we're going to hear from Tiffany in a minute. But how does this work? Where do we get confounded in leadership, especially in the home, to bring to work? I need, I want, and I have. At work, that accountability at work is more clearly laid out. At work, it's like, you need to do this. You already have this resource, and I really don't care about what you want because this is your workplace. But at home, no. Your needs can be personal. Your wants can be personal. They can be practical, or they can be practical. But often you have things that you're overlooking and you don't see. So how does this do it? You're going to download this. You're going to quantify. Here's the objective, and you're going to qualify. Here's the subjective. To quantify, maybe this isn't applicable. Maybe it has up to 25% importance, or maybe it's up to half of my life's importance, or 51% more importance. What is important to you for each of these? Just quantify it. All right. Then you're going to qualify. Oops. Sorry. And are you going to qualify that as a mom, as a spouse? I could put as a parent, as a pro for your sanity, for your family's well being, for everyone, for a better today and tomorrow. How are you qualifying what you need? And the same goes for what you want, and the same goes for what you have. So as you go through this, you're going to have these colored buttons that are going to start showing up. So let me just throw something in there. This is a 25% of importance. My children's friends with our family. As a mom, that is extremely important to me. And I need it. I want it. To quantify it, let me just run this really quick. It's important as a need, as a want. I'm going to put it up here. Do you see that? I've got a gap between what I need and what I want. Do I already have that? Yeah, I've got it. So I'm going to qualify this. I want this for what? For my sanity. And I have it. Yes. I have it as a professional. So I'm going to start looking at this, and then I'm going to come over here, and then we're going to start looking at the gap. This is the hard part. It's simple to answer and difficult to acknowledge, and these are our red flags. Are there gaps between need, want, and have? Yes or no? What layer is that? A family at home, extended family, community, school, extras, or at work? I'm going to say that's probably family at home. Do I have a red flag? Am I stuck? Am I anchored? Am I overwhelmed? Things can get worse. Things will get worse. They can get worse. They will get worse. I feel like I need help or I have nothing. So I say that sometimes I feel like I'm overwhelmed. There's a red flag. And so as you go through this, and I'm going to stop then we're back. All right. I went through that really quick. It takes time to sit down and to look at. But when you are able to plot out, and Tiffany went through this struggle, I need, I want, I have. What layer do you need or want or have that in? In each one of those portions of your leadership, you're able to see where it applies at work, where it's at home, so on and so forth. Tell us about that experience.
Well, it was very enlightening because I would say I'm a pretty introspective person, but the level of clarity around what I need and what I want and what I have, it's very deep to see it and be broken down in the categories. And so there's so many things that happen at as a result of each column analysis. So the I need, as a mother who, I would say is an overachiever and deep thinker and constantly strategizing all the time in both spaces, home and work, I need opened up a whole can of worms. Because have I even thought about what I need? I think about what everybody else needs. I didn't think about what I need. So as I started going through it, I started saying to myself, damn, I need that. I didn't realize that I need this. Or uh I need this, but I actually don't need it as much. Or I actually need too much. What's going on there? Or it's not as important as I thought it was. So that need column was just eye-opening just because I had to do deep work for myself. It was not necessarily related to anybody else. However, identifying what everybody else needed was actually easier than it was for me.
Of course.
And I know this. I would never tell anybody else to, put their family completely first and leave yourself to the side. But I think inherently as mothers, a lot of times we do this without even realizing. Then I got into I want, and respectfully, I want everything. So
I didn't put 6 months off from the family on that list, in case you didn't notice. Because if everybody wants everything, like if you're no seriously, if I were to put 6 months away from family and work, or just 6 months on a tropical island somewhere, whatever it is, on a mountaintop, and you were going to share this in a family session, and somebody saw that, they're going to be like, "Wait, you don't want to be with?" All right, go on.
Exactly, right? So that's where get perspective, right? Because there's elements of this where I realized, and you talked about being a parent in California, and I'm using California as a reference point for North America. I think that going back to how we even met and our perspectives and vantage points being from other countries or living in other countries, the element of community, when you have synergy because everybody is on the same page, everybody is coming from the same faith background, it makes it a little bit easier. But as a parent who's in a society or an environment where, everyone's got different perspectives, religions, underpinnings, uh, there's an inherent feeling that you may have to do a lot of things by yourself. And so, what it reminded me about was the importance of community, finding community, whether it's in friends, because we don't necessarily we have family here, but very little, and they've got their own life, so you don't want to fully put your needs on one family. And so it's like finding the synergy between the people that you know, love, and trust, and not doing it all by yourself. I don't think it was ever intended for it to be that way.
And no, that's the whole status quo problem that causes gaps, because there's like this
Exactly.
interjection. I firmly believe that before I die, and let's say I'm going to live to 100, I'm going to be 58, so let's say I'm going to make it to 100, okay? I firmly believe, it's going to be really funny if we pull this video up like 40 years from now, 42
I
years from now.
know.
But anyways, okay. But I firmly believe, going back to this belief, that we are witnessing a becoming back to.
Yes.
Because there was this invented thing somewhere where the kids grow up at 18, they leave the house, they go on, they leave. And then COVID, when it came, and everybody started going back to tribal anthropological living, and realized that the family nucleus has to be bigger, the little local tribe has to be bigger. I believe that we're going to witness this becoming back to.
100% agree with you. Yep. And so there's the I need, I want, and I have. And I have was so wonderful because it's a state of gratitude that I fell into. I have a lot I'm so grateful for. And when I say I have a lot, I'm not necessarily talking about financial or, community. I'm talking about small things, happiness, a family that I can actually care about and do this spreadsheet for. So humbling. And so I think it's very important that everybody goes through an exercise like this, because it helps you to first and foremost stop and prioritize thought.
See,
Your
do,
own thought,
become.
to see.
You see before you go straight to the do.
Absolutely. And get perspective on really what's happening. What are we doing here? Right? And then you realize that you do need some things. You need to make space for it. You want some things. You need to make space to do the things, to get the things that you want and that you need. And that you might be neglecting and disrespecting what you already have. And so you start to get into this wonderful space where things become clear and you're able to put stuff in the right space and time, and to start sweeping things away that you don't actually need, which makes space, which holds you accountable to do the things that you need to do, to get the things that you want and that you need.
You wrapped
So
that up
yeah,
really
it's great.
well. My last question, then I'm going to wrap this one up. You ready? Last question is needs and
Mm-hmm.
wants. Okay. Fine line. So, in the world of space and time, and I am guilty of this, you guys, I confess, and this is why this is there, because to transport leadership skills from parenting to home, to work, and then from work to parenting, there's a really big fine line between need and want. The halves are clear,
Mm-hmm.
because at work, you want it, you don't want it, you might be listened to, you might not. the want is almost never really a big consideration at work. But in your personal life, that want sometimes is bigger than the need. So, like this, I want to go spend X amount to go do my whole face because I'm going to be 58 and closer to 60. Do I need that? No. Do I want it? Yeah. Is it more important than some of the needs, like getting my daughter into college? Do you see what I'm saying? And so if I do what you guys think about this. These are where these gaps come in. I'm just throwing this out there. If I do what I want, will I be sacrificing a need? Or will it make me feel so empowered in my leadership that I'm able to lead myself into my wants that then I'm going to fulfill the needs better? Big question. Okay, so this is one of those needs and wants where sometimes what we want turns into a need because it's going to fulfill us more. And then we move to the needs. I just wanted to throw that out there, but it's being able to put that into perspective. So now that we're wrapping this, you guys, I hope everybody watching this, I hope you all watching this, number one, have learned from Tiffany because she's got a lot to teach and she's got a lot to offer. I don't know. I just really hope you've learned from Tiffany because everybody gets sick of hearing me all the time talk about the same thing. And so Tiffany's bringing in the perspective, but as my sister from a different mister. And that feeling that community, friendship, neighbors, identity, being heard, being brave enough to go out of the status quo, building time for yourself, it's all important. But through this exercise, what I'd say is the most important is understanding that you have leadership skills at home, bring them to work. Let me help you bring them to work. Let Tiffany help you bring them to work because you will boost your career and then your needs and wants will become more fulfilled. So see it, do it, and become. And before I sign this one off, Tiff, is there anything on this open mic that you want to just cast out to the world, to the universe?
Oh yeah. To all the moms, whether you're a person who is at home with your children or you're in the workforce, I've actually had the privilege of being on both sides. I would say to you that you are absolutely highly qualified to do all the things that you've been given to do in this life. And at times you're going to feel insecure in one of those spaces. And kudos to those who don't feel insecurity in any of those spaces. High five. But for the rest of us in this world who have moments, I would say align yourself to other women, even other parents, dads. High five to the single parents out there. My dad was a single parent for a very long time. My mom was a single parent for a long time. We are living in some of the most complex times in this world, and are actually unrealistically being expected or expecting of ourselves to thrive in a system or a setup or in processes that are actually not designed for us to thrive. And so find good people who care about you, who want to see you win. Debbie, thank you. And don't endure it alone. But for those particularly who are entering into the workspace, I'll give you a tidbit. I went on LinkedIn when I jumped back into the workspace. Debbie will tell you I was scared. I was like, oh man, I'm going back in. I don't know if I
Wait a
know
sec, wait a
my
sec, wait a
back from
sec,
my
wait a
front.
sec. Do you remember your first day at work where we
I
were?
do. Yes.
We
At a
were at a
gymnastics
gymnastics competition. Yeah.
And I was saying to Debbie, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I've been out. I don't know if I'm qualified. All those questions. Fast forward, I'm in my third contract, likely to enter into my fourth contract with the same client. And I say all this to say, when I even put out into the world my requirements for a job on LinkedIn, what I said was, I'm looking for a company who cares about work-life balance, who cares about people, and is open to someone re-entering into the market. And I'm bringing this up because within 3 days, I received feedback, and I'm working with a company that actually is a parent company of a company that I worked with in Canada. How I want to sum this up is that if something's for you and you put your full, genuine nature into all the things that you do, what shows up is exactly for what you need to do, for where you need to be, for the time that you need to do it for. And why? Because you're amazing and you're totally qualified. That's it.
I have nothing else to say. So to all of our viewers, thank you for being here. Tiffany, thank you for sharing your time with us. And to all of the viewers, welcome back to another episode of GAPCAST. If this interests you, don't forget we are going to supply the links for the stuff that you saw on top. And you can go back to other episodes to understand a little bit more about the world of GAP. And we'd like you to comment on what Tiffany had to say. Comment. It resonates. Yes. I feel the same thing's happening here. Or you know what? Maybe you guys could touch on this or touch on that. Comment, because let's see how Tiffany's experience resonates with all of you. And for that, I say thank you. And we'll see you on the next episode.